Angular modules became optional, and I couldn't wait anymore to show you the new API of standalone components that are coming with Angular 14 very soon. My name is Dmitry. You're watching Decoded Frontend channel. Subscribe right now and let's get started. If you are an active Angular community member, then you probably know that for quite a long time there has been a discussion about making NgModules in Angular optional. It would allow us to simplify the mental model of the Angular framework, make it way more easier, and it would allow us to have components as a smallest reusable building block of the framework, like it is in React and Vue.js and other front-end frameworks. But currently in Angular, the smallest reusable block is NgModule. In Angular 14, it seems like dreams come true, if it was your dream actually, and Angular core team introduces standalone components. Those are components that could be used without declaring them in NgModules declaration array. So it basically makes NgModules optional. I should highlight that this feature enabled as a developer previews. It means that the API for this new type of components is not stable yet and might be changed in the future. Not necessarily that it will change, but it might change. Depends on the community feedback, depends on some maybe use cases that were not covered by initial design of those standalone components and so on. So your feedback is very important. So please either drop your thoughts in the comment section for this video, or you can go to this RFC for this NgModules following this link, and here you can join the discussion and express your thoughts about that and so on and so forth. So this functionality is not yet ready for production. It gives you some overview, gives you the direction where framework will be in the future, and you can prepare for this future and adjust your libraries, your applications accordingly, and make the transition to this new API smoother in the future. So now when you're designing your applications, you can design it like keeping in mind that in the future probably we will not be needed to use NgModules. It doesn't mean that they will disappear already next major release or something like that. Now, there are a lot of things built around this NgModules, and they will definitely stay with us for quite decent amount of time. But I think in the future, in the far future, NgModules will be eventually removed, but it's just my guess. In this video, I just wanted to show you how you could start with standalone components, how to do some very basic stuff, and how to refactor some applications that are built with NgModules and refactor it such a way that it will work without NgModules at all. So let's get started, and I prepared some demo example for this tutorial. This is just a very simple Angular application, and if we have a look at the code, you can see that this is the application that consists from two Angular modules, app module obviously, and user module. Application has also a router, it has only one road, and it is lazily load user module when we enter the root path, and user module, it consists basically only from one user component, and it imports some Angular material stuff, doesn't really important, and the component actually is empty. So that's pretty much it. Before we start refactoring, we have to update our Angular project, because currently this application created with Angular 13, and as I mentioned before, in order to use standalone components, we have to use the latest version, Angular 14. So let's do the update. First, I will stop my application, and in order to update Angular app, we have to run command ng update, and with this -- next flag, I tell Angular CLI that update to the latest possible version of Angular, including release candidates, beta versions, and so on. So I run this command, and this command will analyze my dependencies and give me the hint which packages I have to actually update. And here is the result. So we have to update 4 packages: CDK, CLI, core, and material. So let's do it. I run ng update, then I'm going to update CDK, CLI, core, and Angular material. And again, with the flag -- next, I say that take the latest possible version. It will take some time, of course, and until we install all packages. If you see this error, I think it is like this bug happens temporary, and later when stable versions are released, this error will disappear. But for now, in order to fix this error, you have to run npm install with -- force flag. All right, dependencies were installed successfully, so we can up and running our application one more time. You can see that everything has been updated to Angular 14 release candidate 0. So everything is fine. And okay, I forgot. Maybe let's create a separate branch. So you will have in the master branch, there will be initial state of the application, and in the separate branch, we will have already finished code with the standalone components. So you could, switch to the initial state and follow my video and type with me if you want, of course. So let's do it. I create a new branch. I call it standalone components. Cool. So we have the application updated. We created a separate branch. Now let's start refactoring actually. And I would suggest you start with a user component. Let's refactor this component first. So I go here and I want to make this component standalone. How do we do that? In order to make it standalone, we have to use the brand new property for the component decorator called standalone, and say true. That's it. Once we did it, we can save it, of course, and we will get an error. And this error says that component user component is standalone and cannot be declared in NgModule. Did you mean to import it instead? Very interesting, especially this keyword import. Let's first try to remove user component from declarations and try to import it as our error message says. So I move it here, I save it, and we have another error that mod card title could not be recognized. Okay, let's for now comment it out. We will get back to this part a bit later, and I will just drop some message that user component works. And if we save right now, we can see that everything was successfully compiled. And indeed, when we jump to the browser, we see that everything works perfectly. Now let's go back and open our user. Okay, we have some error here, could not be resolved. I think it's problem with Angular language server. We have to restart it, and yeah, and now the error disappeared. So if you have glitches like that VS Code highlights the error and you don't have any errors in the console output, It means that probably Angular language service has some problems. You have to restart it. All right, but let's get back to user module and talk about this interesting thing. So you can see that we had to move our user component from declarations into imports array. So before, we were not allowed to add declarable stuff like directives, pipes, or components into imports. Inside the imports array, you could add only NgModules before, but now we are allowed to do this. Why? It leads us to the actual implementation of standalone components. The trick is that standalone components, they, under the hood, they use so-called virtual module. It is very similar to scam pattern in Angular, single component Angular module. The idea is that every single component has its dedicated module and they have one-to-one relationship. The similar idea is, I would say even the same idea is applied to these standalone components as well. Under the hood, they use Angular module and it actually makes this new design compatible with the code base that uses NgModules. Because in this case, NgModule kind of hidden behind the standalone components. You don't see it, but it exists. And that's why we could import the component into import. I hope I could explain it somehow clear. If not, yeah, please welcome to the comment section. Now let's get back to our template and let's try to uncomment this part, and I'm going to remove this paragraph. So you can see that the mat card component could not be recognized for this component. So taking into consideration what I just said, that every standalone component has its own module, virtual module, this error is pretty easy to explain why we cannot recognize this mat card component, because we didn't import it into this, so to say, virtual module. Yeah, we import it in the user module, but user component, you can treat it as a module itself, and this mat card is not visible for this module. So we have to import mat card module into user component that uses under the hood the virtual module. So how we can import other modules into standalone component? So we can do it like this. I will copy this import and remove it from here. And we will go to user component TS file, and I place here the mat card module import. And besides the standalone property, we got also imports property where we can add our material card module. And if we save it right now, you can see that everything again works. Standalone components, they kind of take partly the functionality from NgModules as well. So it is basically under the hood the module. Every standalone component is being wrapped by a dedicated module. I imagine it for myself. When I think about it, I imagine it like that. All right, let's move forward. So the following question: can we get rid from user module already or not? I don't think so, because we still have one unresolved dependency, namely it is a routing module. So if you remember, we use a lazy loading right here, and for lazy loading we need a module. So the question, how do we deal with lazy loading if we don't have modules anymore. For this purpose, there is a new property called load component, and instead of module, we just have to import components, and here now we should use not a user module, but user component. As easy as that. And now we can see that everything still works. Our component is loaded, so we can now remove user module at all, and user routing module could be deleted as well. So there are only 3 files remains: TS file, SCSS, and HTML. Okay, so we just refactored our user component and made it standalone. That is cool. And what I wanted to highlight especially is that you can see that it is still compatible with the old approach based on NgModules. So you can combine standalone component with the old approach and it will be working. And it is really cool because we can incrementally migrate to standalone components without breaking our application. But let's move forward, and we have to refactor also application components. So let's go to app component and make it also standalone. Here we go, and we would need to import some Angular material modules, namely material toolbar. So let's copy it here, remove it from imports, and then inside our app component TS, we will import mat toolbar like that. And we see the error that standalone component cannot be declared. So we have to remove it from here and move it inside imports. And additionally, I have to import a router module because inside the template I'm using router outlet directive, and in order to use it in my app component, I have to import also router module. So now I can save it, and you can see that everything compiled successfully. It works, though I'm surprised a little bit because I thought that app component, if it's standalone, it is not allowed to be used inside the Bootstrap module. So wait a second. Okay, I had to save this file in order to trigger that. Yeah, indeed. The thing is that standalone components, they're not allowed to be inside this Bootstrap property. Bootstrap property, it allows you to bootstrap some certain component. When we bootstrap the application itself, it will create the root components for applications on the page, and in my case, app component will be assigned to this app root selector. Obviously, because here's the app root selector, so they will be matching. And this is why we would need to have this bootstrap. So it means that we should bootstrap our standalone components somehow differently. Yeah, also because app module will be removed eventually. So there should be another way how we create and bootstrap the application, and it is such a way. In order to adjust our application, we have to go to the file that we almost never touch. It's called main TS file. And here we have to refactor this line. You can see that currently we bootstrap module and we provide the application module, but because we get rid from modules, there is another function called bootstrap application, and instead of module we should obviously provide a component like that. And now I can remove unused imports, save it, and it is compiled at least successfully. But if we go to the application, we see that there are no appropriate providers for our router. So we should somehow provide those providers, and we can do it by providing the application config, and application config has providers property. And here we can declare providers for our application. And if you remember, before we had such a pattern called for root for child. By the way, I have a dedicated video about that. Yeah, this is how we provided roles and necessary providers with NgModules. But how will it work now when we don't have modules? So there is some helper function for it called import providers from. So you have to import this function from Angular core, and here you can provide router module for root. You have to import it here, and also you have to export roles constant, of course save it and import it from application routing module. That's it. We can remove an app routing module like that. We can remove this part and leave only constant with roles type imported. I can save it. I can save my main.ts file, and you can see that everything was successfully compiled. Let's check if application still works, and it works fine. So now we can completely get rid from app module and remove it, and our application will be working as before, and currently we use only standalone components. So I have to say that there are some limitations using this Bootstrap application approach, namely if you need to instantiate a couple of Angular applications on the one page, you cannot do this with this approach. Also, you cannot override ngZone if you need, of course, to do that. And if for whatever reason you want to use ngDo Bootstrap lifecycle hook in the app component, then it also would not work with this new API. So keep in mind that before you start to do refactoring. Otherwise, we are done, and I commit these changes and publish it to the GitHub, as I said at the very beginning. And this is pretty much it. This is how you can start with standalone components. Alright guys, that was it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you are also excited like me about this future without Angular modules. What do you think about that? I would like to hear your opinion as well. Do you find this standalone components useful, or you were absolutely comfortable with Angular modules? And if you do that, why? I think it would be a very interesting discussion. So join it in the comment section and leave your feedback. Besides that, I wanted to say that subscribe to my other social media. There I started to post some small, I call them Frontend Snacks. Actually, those are small tips and tricks regarding RxJS, regarding TypeScript, and all other stuff related to frontend. It looks like it might be useful for some of you. And of course, don't forget that I have video courses that you would like to check out. Probably, yeah. So follow the video description, and there you will find necessary links and probably some coupons if there are some promotions currently. Otherwise, I wish you productive week ahead, guys. Stay safe and see you in the next video.